Welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, a podcast about urbanism and stuff. I am one of your co-hosts here today, Alex Williams, and joining me, I've got the one and only Nick Laporte.
Hello, and welcome back, everybody.
And, of course, the also one and only Ethan Myers.
Welcome back, everybody. It's great to be here.
I will admit, I'm not the one and only Alex Williams. My name is common enough. I have a friend named Alex Williams. But that's fine. We could always use more. I'm so excited to be back on the podcast. I feel like I've been away for months and months and months, even though I just missed last week, and then I missed the 2 weeks prior to that. But I'm back. We're back, and we're having a grand old time. Welcome to our one live audience member. We're happy to have you. And if you want to be a live audience member,
it's two now. Somebody else popped in. Look at that.
Somebody else is
Look
here.
at that.
Oh my goodness, this is beautiful. We're growing. Can we get
Many
to three?
people are joining us, but
we do the show live now, and you can tune in for that on Patreon, I think, or you get the link through Patreon by joining the Patreon.
Join up on Patreon as little as $1 a month to get the live show, early access, and what else is on there? Yeah, that's most of it, I think.
Oh, Discord access.
Yes.
Oh,
Discord.
yeah, that's right. That's right. We do have a Discord server where we're hanging out with a whole bunch of us, including a bunch of our previous co-hosts are hanging out there as well. So we have a great time. And we have a great show ready for you today. We're going to let Nick kick us off with some updates.
This is an update, continuation of last week when I talked about the Beach Avenue bike lane here in Vancouver. The city council was going to vote whether or not they're going to return one portion of it to a two-way car lane, because currently it is one lane. So yeah, I'm going to share what I've got on the screen here. It's kind of showing a map of what it looks like. So or at least right now, it's still just, it's a bi-directional bike lane, a travel lane that's going one direction, and then there's a walking path beside it. But now they're saying there's going to be a curbside lane, which is for parking, a travel lane in either direction. They're going to build up a new bike lane now where the sidewalk is, and then I don't know if they're building extra walking path beside that on the parkland, an actual green space along the beach. So yeah, most people are upset about it, but it's not the worst part of this whole thing. The worst part of this whole thing is that this is all part of a plan that the city has been working on for years. This Beach Ave plan. They're going to revamp the whole beach front area on the west end of Vancouver, and this is like one of the most popular spots for people to hang out on the beaches in the evenings all year long, but especially in the summertime. And this is the only part of that whole plan that they're keeping, is just to return bi-directional traffic to that section of the path. And I think the worst part about that is that they've wasted all this money, and now they're going to spend millions of dollars to create this 1 or 2 block stretch of bike lane, and then also on top of that
return
more traffic into the city, because this is actually going to allow people coming off the Lionsgate Bridge into Stanley Park to come into the west end of Vancouver, which is just going to create more traffic. It's not going to help people get anywhere faster. There's just going to be more cars in a densely populated area, which is not what we want. It's the literal opposite of the goals the city has set to reducing carbon emissions, making the city safer, and the list goes on. So it's just really disappointing, but I am going to be talking to Lucy Maloney, and I think that'll be out on Sunday, but I'm talking to her tomorrow, so at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. If you want to listen live, I'll be talking to her about this, among other things, when it comes to cycling in Vancouver and abroad. So yeah, it is disappointing, but we'll see what happens.
That is pretty disappointing, because it sounds like right now the streetscape is pretty nice. But yeah, hopefully your conversation with Lucy can shed some more light on that, and maybe some light on what can be done. I don't know.
Probably nothing. Honestly, what I expect to happen is that because here's you know what, I'll save it for Lucy. But what I expect to happen is them not to actually build this extra bike lane, be like, oh, we can't afford it now, and then just return traffic 2 ways. That's probably what's going to happen. It's what we saw in Stanley Park with the bike lane. They didn't build anything new like they promised. It should have been done already. So
wow.
Anyway,
wow.
Next update is from Ethan.
So, folks, if you don't know, I live in Las Vegas, and one of the things that we actually do here is we do have a real transit system. and it's mostly based around buses, but recently they have been looking for feedback for enhancement programs for 3 of their corridors. One on Charleston Avenue that runs east-west, one on Boulder Highway that runs northwest to southeast, and then one running up to Nellis Air Force Base. These are all 3 corridors that they're looking into studying. They want to do these improvements, and they want to actually get public support. And it looks like from some of the renderings that they've done that they're looking to eventually get light rail on some of these corridors. But they're looking for community input. The link we will post it in some of the descriptions on here, but they are looking for community input on these corridors. And if you are in the Vegas area, or, just want to, make your voice heard, the RTC of Vegas is looking to hear input from the community. So, we love community input. And if you want, your voice heard that, hey, maybe, a city that's totally based itself around cars for decades should, invest a little bit more in transit. This is a great opportunity to do so and help turn a Sunbelt city into a less car-dependent one.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I think it's really important for people to get involved. Speaking of getting involved and being less car-dependent, my update is on Banff Ave. We have talked about Banff so many times on the show, and we've talked about this kind of back and forth they've had with both the city council as well as Parks Canada, as well as the people who live in the town of Banff, and trying to figure out whether or not they're going to maintain this pedestrian zone on Banff Avenue. And they voted. The city council voted the other day, and the news is, it's actually going to a vote on August 12th. So city council.
Standard.
Yeah, so city council was like, we're going to keep this. And then people were mad at them. So then they're like, fine, we'll talk about it again. And then on May 13th, they were like, actually, okay, we're going to have the people vote. So they're going to have kind of a little plebiscite on August 12th on whether or not to maintain this pedestrian zone every summer. In the meantime, starting May long weekend, so that's this upcoming weekend, starting May long weekend, they will close this avenue to car traffic, and it will be pedestrianized until if people in Banff vote to keep the pedestrianized zone each summer, then it'll take a few weeks, but by September it'll be closed down. And then if they vote to keep it, it will go until Thanksgiving in October. And if they vote to get rid of it, it'll kind of just be dismantled over the course of a few weeks. So, yeah, a bit of a bummer. But if you live in Banff, if we happen to have any Banff-based listeners, go out and participate in this and try and save it. I really hope, though, that it being closed for the summer, people will be like, okay, actually, this is pretty nice. And then when they go to vote on it, they're thinking, well, it was really nice to be out on a patio and dining, they might enjoy it more. So we'll
but the traffic.
But the traffic, where will the cars go in this beautiful national park?
Where will I park?
Yeah, you're
it's
right.
It's called a national park. I need to be able to park there, Alex.
Do you know what's funny, though? This doesn't remove any parking. You can't park on Banff Ave anyways. And so this isn't even about parking, which is shocking. I know.
Well, clearly the traffic is just going to use other streets, right?
No, impossible. They can't use other streets. This is the only street in the city. But yeah, that's my little update. So I guess mid-August we'll have something more to say about that.
We'll find out.
This is exhausting, honestly. But we'll see how it goes. Anyways, Nick, we're going to let you get going with a story here.
Police bans Kidical Mass in Portugal due to safety concerns. So the police stated that the parade conflicts with the freedom of movement of other citizens, could lead to restrictions or circulation in the surrounding area, aka cause congestion, and access to hospitals, as well as endangering the safety of participants and other road users. Yes, if you're listening to this, I made a very strange movement because I'm like, what the fuck? So basically, if you don't know what kidical mass is, it's like critical mass. Critical mass happens all over the world. It started in San Francisco quite a while ago, but it happens in different places like here in Vancouver, where people get together on the last Friday of the month to have a protest and also a celebration of bike infrastructure, for having good bike infrastructure, but also protesting to say, hey, we need a safe space. It's reclaiming the streets. So kidical mass is the same thing, but with children involved too. Families bring their children. It's a safe thing to do, where people say, hey, we need safe places to move around with our families. So
Indoctrination, clearly.
Indoctrinating our kids to say, hey, we should probably make our cities in such a way that kids can get around safely on their own, or even with their families. So yeah, that's probably a good thing to do in my estimation. I put up some examples here, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can see what that looks like. Yeah, so this is very disappointing to think that this needs to be canceled over these types of concerns. Like worrying about congestion. Like, what? I don't understand how this is even possible for the police to do this, because in a lot of places, the police will actually facilitate these. Like I'm showing in this one, I think it's in Austria, where the police is leading the kidical mass ride as a parade, essentially. It's not a lot of people. I think here in this one in Portugal, it was like 50 people. Like, that can't stretch more than half of a block. That's like only a few cars worth of people. Like, it's nothing.
Yeah. That's brutal. That's really disappointing, especially seeing that happening in Europe too.
Oh,
like whenever
Mm-hmm.
news like this comes out, I'm like, guys, we're supposed to be getting better, not worse, right? It really does feel like a one step forward, two steps back sort of situation.
Absolutely. And all of this stuff is there to promote other ways of moving around, which we know reduces congestion, reduces car use, and actually makes it better for everybody to move around the city. It's, yeah, all over. It's just disappointing. Like, I could only imagine if, like, okay, well, in what case is this actually cancelable? Because
Right.
how I understand it, this is something that's been planned. It's been sanctioned. This is a sanctioned thing. Whereas, for example, critical mass here in Vancouver is not sanctioned. People get together. It's planned, but it's not sanctioned. They're not asking the city if they can do it. It's a sort of protest, like a what do they call those, flash mob protests? Even though it happens at the same time every month, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Jen in the comments here, so we have a live chat going along with the show. Jen made a really good comment. She said, during a critical mass ride in Calgary, an ambulance was coming up behind needing to pass. The mass of bikes moved to the side faster than cars ever would and gave the ambulance much more room than cars ever would. It was so cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
that is
happens
huge.
time and time again. Like, anytime I
People
go,
forget that bikes are so insanely flexible. A lot of, like, people who, don't really get the urbanist movement kind of see bikes as just, like, slower than cars, therefore they have all the same downsides as cars. But that's just not the case. I mean, they're a lot more flexible when it comes to movement.
very, very much so. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that really struck me about this statement from the police is that it'll be endangering the safety of the participants and other road users. Like, how? It's just a mass of bikes. Like, I don't know how this is endangering the safety of the public, including the people who are participating. It doesn't make any sense. The problem is the cars. It's always the cars.
No, Nick. This is because you're bought out by Big Bike.
Big bike.
The bicycle mafia is paying you off.
They're not paying me very well, if that's the case. That's definitely true.
Yeah.
but-
We're gonna need the bicycle mafia to cough up a little bit more, but
Yeah, but it's a call to safety. And we know the only way and the only reason that it's unsafe to walk, it's unsafe to cycle, it's unsafe to be in the streets is because there's cars. It's to say, we have too many cars. We need to slow them down. We need less of them to make our streets safer. And to cancel this is just ridiculous. Anyway.
this is also
yeah.
Portugal, right? Like, what Porto?
Yeah, it's north of
Yeah, it's
Lisbon.
it's fairly walkable from my understanding. I mean, like, from what I have seen about it, it's not Houston or anything. It's got like transit and walkable streets there. So I don't get it.
Yeah. That is actually it's really, really disappointing. But we'll jump over to my story here. This is great news. I have one of those steps forward, and that is that Calgary, this is where I've been for the past almost 4 weeks. Calgary has passed RCG upzoning.
Oh my God.
So we have made it
go.
We have made it legal to build townhomes anywhere in the city that previously it was only allowed to build single detached homes. This is so exciting. I am so pleased. I am exhausted from how much effort I've put into getting this passed. But we did do it. It was there are 15 votes, and it was 9-6 is what the vote came down to. So it wasn't a sweep. And honestly, right up to the very end, even some of the councillors in their final remarks, I was like, "Are you there? Are we cool?" But we did it, and thank goodness that we did. It was a 16-day public hearing, and and then the questions of administration, and then the debate and amendments that tried to kill it. Some of the amendments were like, no, you have to have a parking spot. So you have to have a parking spot for every single unit and every single secondary unit, which would basically mean that if you built this to the max, which is 4 townhomes and 4 basement suites, the whole rest of the property would just be parking. We fortunately didn't have to deal with that. There still is a parking minimum of 0.5 spots per unit, which is it's doable, it's manageable, and administration was very clear with the councillors that was a compromise. Administration said it should be 0.
Yeah.
But so many people complained. We said, fine, it'll be 0.5.
It's like, okay, congratulations on Calgary. Great. This is more freedom, right? From a place that you'd expect that you'd want that. People want to have freedom, to have choice to do what they want with their property. So that's fantastic. Parking mandates, don't like that. But if it's 0.5, again, it's a compromise, and at least it's passed. Wait, what was the vote again?
It was 9-6.
Can you say it the other way?
6-9.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But yeah, we got there, and some of the councillors had some really great insights in their closing arguments, talking about how this is about people, not parking. Other councillors continued to spread misinformation in their closing remarks, saying that this is something that has been forced on us by the Trudeau Liberals, and
this is Biden's America, folks.
Oh yeah. Just a bunch of other stuff. You guys have no idea. I need to make like a compilation of some absolutely insane things said during this hearing.
I'm disappointed you didn't share more of those, but I understood why you didn't at the time. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of those. The kind of insane takes, ridiculous takes, just the out to lunch people, because those are really entertaining, especially the one you shared with me. Anyway, I'm not going to talk with the Wiccan.
Yeah. No.
In time.
Yeah.
In time. I do think it's important. Like, I don't want to shame people for speaking at a public hearing. However, I will shame counselors who say stupid shit. And some even like some of them have said some really, really nasty things and misinformation-y things. There were several times lawsuits were brought up, and counselors would be like, well, what if we get sued? And administration is like, this is definitely something within our power to do. We are not worried about lawsuits. And the counselors are like, but other people, they're bringing lawsuits to us. And administration, the legal department was like, and we can deal with those. We're not worried about this. So it's interesting. It's a bright day here in Calgary. This is a good thing that has passed, and now it's on to the next thing, and the next, because there's always improvement to be made.
Sounds like you got to go after those parking mandates next.
Oh yeah, that's high on my list. I do. Before we go on to Ethan's story, I want to note something about parking. I went to an event last week. That's why I wasn't here. I was at a SAPL event, the School of Architecture, Planning, and Landscape here in Calgary. And I was at this event and we're talking about housing and stuff. And one of these people who works in affordable housing, he mentioned to us that one of the things holding us back from building proper transit-oriented development is parking mandates and minimums. One of our stations here in Calgary that people often look to as, hey, why don't we do a TOD there? It's got a huge parking lot, and the problem is, the biggest thing holding us back is that people would expect that we preserve those parking spaces for those park and ride people, the people who park at the train station and ride into downtown. But each of those parking spaces, if you were to turn into a parkade, if you wanted to do underground parking, a parking structure, it would cost $50,000 a parking space to build that structure. To preserve all of those spots, you're on top of building what is hopefully going to be affordable housing. You are going to be building a $37 million parkade. And guess who's paying for that? Not the people who park there because it's free parking to hop on the train and head downtown. It's going to be the people who are supposed to be living in this affordable housing. It's not affordable housing if each of those apartments is now having to cost an extra $50,000, not to mention that they're probably going to have their own parking spot as well. So that's $100,000 of parking tacked onto every single apartment in those buildings. And how is that affordable housing, right? This is the biggest thing holding us back. We have to get rid of parking minimums. It's not a matter of if we do, like, it's when. And doing it today is certainly better than doing it tomorrow. So yeah, that is a battle. That's definitely something we have to have. Austin says in the comments, he says, affordable housing, asterisks, for cars. And,
Yeah.
all car parking is
yeah.
affordable housing for them.
Oh, it's
Oh,
wild.
yeah.
Oh,
It's brutal.
okay. Yeah. End parking mandates. It's ridiculous. But there was a story that's kind of fired up in Vancouver right now related to this, and that's parking at the beach at Spanish Banks, which is the most westerly one in the city of Vancouver, looking northwards. And now, this summer, they're adding paid parking. Now you have to pay to park there. And this is parking spaces that's like always full, people circling around trying to find spots. You want guess how much they're charging? Anybody want to
$5 or $5 Canadian
for what?
parking
per day.
per day.
It's $1 an hour.
Oh my
$1 an hour, and people are freaking the fuck out. Like, what about the families? What about these families? They can afford this. We're taught $1 an hour. That's like a round trip on transit for one person. That is extremely cheap. And then, you start bringing up bikes and people freak out. Wow, well, I gotta bring the barbecue and the cooler and everything. Anyway,
You can bring it on the train. It's not that hard.
you know what?
Also, you know what?
Actually, really cool thing related to beach transit. There are some trains and some buses. I know this one specifically. The Sunrunner in St. Pete Beach, which is a BRT type service, has surfboard racks.
That's really cool.
That is cool. That is cool. I also think that, Nick, shame on you for assuming that not everybody is always transporting around a barbecue. Do you have any idea what it's like to be a good father? Any good father will carry a barbecue around with him at all times. And shame on you. Shame on you, sir. I bet you've never even eaten a hamburger in your life. You're disgusting.
I don't have an apron that says "World's Best Dad." You're right. I absolutely do.
You're a fraud. You're a fraud.
But my point is, why? Okay, you can complain about parking and the cost of it, and which is I'm right there with you. And I'm going to say my rebuttal to that is, why should I pay for it? Why should I pay for you to park your car? And that's the whole discussion around this: is why should someone else pay for you to park your car? If you can answer that, come on. Like, we want to talk about it, but there's not going to be a satisfactory answer.
Once autonomous vehicles take over, you can just have it do Uber trips while you're at the beach.
Oh my God! So
Y'all remember that?
Yeah, but just a side tangent. But I was listening to one of the most recent episodes from micromobility.io, and Horace Dediu, the guy who coined the term micromobility, he was talking to his co-host about this, and having basically everybody's going to have this like convoy of Winnebagos, essentially, right? There's just highways full of them, just circling, never stopping. You'd be living on them, just rolling constantly. Because then that's free real estate, right? As long as it's moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just live in it while it moves.
There was a video that came out, I think today, from a channel called Future Proof, and he talks about consumerism and stuff like that, and he was talking about how cars are getting worse, and of course then he goes into all like the techie stuff that's in the cars now and all of this stuff, and then he says all of these cars, all of this added tech that goes into them, and this is how he finishes the video. Basically, he's like, all this added tech that goes into these cars is to turn them into something we already have. It's called transit. It's called public transit. Yeah. All of this self-driving nonsense, the trucks that like kind of line up behind each other. It's like, these are trains. Like it always results in trains. We've never found, and I don't think we ever will find, a better mode of transportation than trains. It's like, it's so easy, you guys. We're already here. We already figured it out. We just have to implement it. We just have to get going with it.
Yeah, we just need to keep implementing more technologies like trains to cars. So that way we can use this autonomous tech even more and truly bring personal, private convenience to our real lives, because no one wants to take transit unless you're poor, right?
Yes, exactly.
Right? Am I wrong?
Transit
See,
is only
here
for
we go.
poor people.
Autonomous cars everywhere. I rest my case.
Thank you, thank you, Ethan. Okay, Ethan, you are up next. You've got a story for us. I'll
beautiful.
pass it off
So
to you.
this comes from or at least friend of me, Tico Phoenix. They are a wonderful content creator out of the Phoenix metro area, and they made a post that really kind of caught my eye when it comes to talking about, different mode share uses or different uses of our roads, because unfortunately, if you know anything about Phoenix, they're not really too interested in multimodal transit on arterial roads. And one of the things that they've done that really kind of enforces the car-oriented hierarchy of most American cities is having reverse lanes during rush hour. And for those of you who aren't familiar with reverse lanes, I'm just going to share their post because I think that it is excellent. And I would absolutely recommend checking them out on Instagram because they are a great creator. But what reverse lanes are these. We'll scroll to the image, but they are these lanes that basically allow you to be flexible with them and tell road users when they can use them throughout the day. So you might have a normal road with 3 lanes going one direction and 3 lanes going the other on a 6-lane road. But during rush hour, these roads can flip to have 4 lanes going in one direction and 2 lanes going in the other direction. And if you know anything about this makes the road confusing for drivers, because drivers aren't exactly looking at signs all the time. It's just not something that they're doing. So when you do this, you end up making these roads a lot more dangerous for not only vehicles that are using the road, but also for pedestrians as well. And they're not even that great for throughput. These roads will pretty frequently jam up during traffic, which is, the exact opposite of what any even DOT engineer wants. And so when you have this unsafe combination of, distracting drivers by making them read signs with confusing, lane markings throughout the day, you really end up with a very dangerous road space. So one of the things that that at least they're recommending is turning this into a road that utilizes bus lanes, and being stable lanes throughout the day rather than changing them up, because this also, according to their post, has impacted local businesses as well too. But it is really kind of interesting to see, because this is a very, very, very Sunbelt thing to do on normal arterial roads rather than just highways. And I just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on it. Just hearing about rush hour, flexible, reversible lanes.
So I don't like these. We have this in Vancouver along or close to the Lionsgate Bridge along Georgia as you approach it, and on the Lionsgate Bridge. It's 3 lanes. In the middle is a flex lane that switches depending on traffic, and there's lights above it that it'll flash X, and then it'll go solid X means don't use it, and the other side it'll give you the green. And approaching it from Vancouver, and when you're going towards Stanley Park, it's much wider. It's like 6 or 7 lanes wide, and it changes. And there's all these lights up top with the X's that say "Don't go." And I would figure that these signs would make it worse and less clear because you have to read basically 3 signs: one that says an X 6 to 9 a.m., one that says you can go straight or left at 4 to 6 p.m., and then it's a bi-directional lane other times. That's just going to be confusing while you're driving to figure that out. That's terrible. And the only reason I think you could, the only way that you can make this work is you need a physical barrier like they do on the Golden Gate Bridge. Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco has a zipper car that moves a barrier over a lane depending on the time of day to allow traffic in either direction. But that's not going to work here. It's a Strode. Like, I mean,
absolutely.
You can't have a barrier along the whole Strode.
No, and I mean, this is really kind of the mindset of only using the road to move car users and car user throughput, rather than actually making the road a multimodal, street. And I mean that this really makes the road incredibly dangerous. Like, this I would imagine would increase on head-on-head collisions like significantly, just purely because you don't have obvious signs telling you what lanes are for what at which hour. Obviously, you have them up top, but when you're going 50 miles an hour down this road, which I can only assume is the speed limit, I mean, you're not going to be reading signs up top like that. It's not something that you're going to do. You're going to be paying attention to the road because the speed that you're moving at is just too fast to be reading these kinds of smaller signs, even when they're above you. And
you need a co-driver.
You really do. It just seems like such a dangerous and like obviously bad idea. Like, it seems okay in concept, but like when you bring it to an actual like arterial road, it just seems like the most dangerous thing you could possibly do. It just seems like you're just purely there to cause chaos, at least when it comes to traffic. But yeah, the suggestion that they made at least was to enhance the road by adding center running, or at least just bus lanes onto the road. And I don't think I could agree more with that. I think that'd be a much, having the fixed lanes throughout the day and then running the bus up the road. I mean, you would increase throughput, you would increase speed of driving, you would increase transit access. It's just overall, and increase safety. It's just overall a win-win for that, replacement of what you could do.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of center running bus lanes, City Nerd today published a video talking about the one in Albuquerque. Oh, and that could probably be a decent model for what we see here, or what we'd like to see change here. I do think this is probably one of those spots in the city that is talked about frequently on their subreddit, because this is something that is probably not just confusing to visitors, but also confusing to the people who live there. And so I'd say not only is this dangerous, but it's also frustrating, and that has its own health impacts and like wellness impacts on a society. Is if things don't work well, right? Like, you really have to design roads for idiots.
Oh yeah, no, literally.
Like, that's yeah, and so Nick, you were talking about the zipper car and stuff. And in Calgary, we've got one spot that I can think of. I don't know if we have others, but we've got one spot that I can think of where we do have this kind of reversal, during rush hour. But there are boom gates that come down, and there's about a block where it'll just like not let anybody drive on it while it makes the shift. And so they have like a pretty decent system to do that. I don't know how, if there's been any incidents on it, but this design here, this is horrible. Like, having the multiple signs and you got to read them as you go. And
so I think the main reason why they did this is that this seems like a much like pre-1990 design for Phoenix, because the thing about Phoenix is that it really didn't build out its highways until way later in its history of the city. Because the city developed a lot later, because it is a Southwest city that gets to be like 250 degrees in the summertime. But one of the things of it is just that it didn't really develop that much in its highways. It wasn't, a big city during the highway building, craze of North America. And so really, when it started getting its highways, it was already the 90s, and there was a lot of opposition to building more highways. So a lot of this seems like a highway network, because they do have a highway network now. It's not massive, but they do have one. But this seems like a pre-highway kind of decision to be able to move more people in and out, because the arterials were probably a lot more important, pre-highway construction.
Yeah. That's interesting history, and hopefully, I think hopefully they can replace it with some decent transit as opposed to this. Do we want to go on to the listener mail?
I've got another story that could be a quick one.
Okay.
We could go
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So this one's coming out of China, actually, which is pretty cool. So China recently introduced the safety technical specifications for lithium-ion batteries used in electric bicycles, addressing 22 production and safety issues like overcharging and short circuits. This standard, effective November 1st, 2024, aims to improve battery quality primarily for the domestic market. However, given China's dominance in e-bike production, these improvement standards are expected to benefit exported batteries as well, enhancing overall safety for e-bikes abroad, which is amazing. So this is a problem we've seen pretty recently, and a lot of it's coming from aftermarket stuff, cheap stuff. A lot of it's coming from China, and we talked about it in the past, especially about New York City, where several deaths have happened, even this past year, from fires caused by batteries, lithium-ion batteries, mostly e-bike batteries, and bodegas, basically having services where they rent out batteries. So they have battery rental services for deliveristas and stuff like that. So this is great. And will it actually translate to safer battery exports? That's a debate. This is very debatable. But the argument is that their domestic market is so big that it wouldn't be worth the people producing these batteries to have like a separate, crappier production line for whatever that aren't following these rules. So that's the argument. Whether or not that'll shake out, we'll see. But I do like this idea that we need safer batteries. Obviously, there's other ways we can do this. We can build it from different compounds, like the lithium ferrous something, LiFePO or whatever. That's a way to do it. Obviously, that has its own drawbacks, but it's a problem that I really want to see addressed as soon as possible, because obviously this is just bad marketing on e-bikes. It's causing fires and killing people, which is not what you want. We want it as safe as possible. We don't want anybody to have that worry at all, that this thing that they have inside their house could explode at any moment.
Yeah.
So this is cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's super exciting.
It's great, actually. I mean, because they are probably about the biggest lithium-ion battery manufacturer just in general. And I mean, it's not just going to be great for e-bikes because they make batteries for all different products, but yeah, it is nice to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would like to see this spread everywhere. Again, I have to keep coming back to that. I don't know if this is going to change things because people are going to mess with their stuff. What I really want to see is the change in the compound so that a thermal runaway isn't a possibility at all. But that's always going to be a possibility with lithium-ion batteries. Even if you have UL certified, they could be the best batteries in the world. You could damage it. Things can happen. There's ways to mitigate that so it's not possible whatsoever. But we'll get there.
I also think it's important for us as consumers to be educated. Like, just don't buy the cheap stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's not worth it. Get things that are trusted and that are reliable, and that are going to be quality. Because especially if you're getting an e-bike, like, this is a car replacement, right? Like, this is like a big deal.
Yeah.
I was riding around on my friend's e-bike last night. We went for a bike ride, and I was like, "Oh, can I try your e-bike?" And it's so effortless. It's so effortless.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Like, it makes it so much easier. Like, I went for a walk today. If I had an e-bike, I would have just taken the e-bike, but I walked because I don't have a bike path. But an e-bike makes it so much easier for me to ride on the road. E-bikes are a game changer, so I'm excited.
It's a no-brainer.
Hear
yeah,
this story.
Absolutely.
The one thing I do want to add too about that, first, is people on the scooter subreddit. Oh my god, it's so annoying. Hey, should I buy this scooter? It's like a $300 scooter and it has like two 1,200 watt motors. You're like, no, that battery will explode before you even get it. Like, it's ridiculous. Just buy good quality stuff. We've talked about it before in this podcast. And number two, what I really like about this is the abroad part is where they're exporting these to places in developing countries. When I was in Thailand, I saw a handful of electric micromobility machines, some scooters and e-bikes, very, very, very few. But for those to replace motorbikes, which are very common in places like Southeast Asia, would be really cool. And if they're safe, not catching things on fire. I love it. Anyway, let's move on to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do some listener mail. Ethan, do you want to take this first?
Yes, let's get on to this first one here. This one comes to us from Matt Montgomery 2800, and they said, I recently watched the below video comparing the dangers of riding e-bikes to the dangers of riding motorcycles. Is that iconic one from a few years ago? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know.
Yes, it is this one. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with this one. But motorbikes require a license, training, full helmets. Drivers usually wear more padding compared to e-bike riders. Motorbikes are heavier and faster and can obviously do a lot more damage to a pedestrian, but should be considered vulnerable road users when it comes to car traffic. What are your thoughts on how communities can govern the use of two-wheels-good mobility through the distinction between motorbike, moped, dirt bike, EV motorbikes, throttle versus pedal assist? 750, 500, 250 watt e-bike motors, etc., becoming increasingly blurred?
That's a really good question, actually. Nick is definitely the most well versed on,
Yes.
on that stuff. To answer
I do want
that.
to say, though, that the video title is titled Why E-Bikes or Why Electric Bikes Are More Dangerous Than Motorcycles, and they kind of come to the conclusion that just biking or cycling in the U.S. is dangerous.
So it's just being on trying to cycle and being slower is more.
Yeah, I
dangerous,
remember this
essentially.
one kind of taken off a couple years ago, and yeah, the cycling urbanist community really was not a big fan of that.
Yeah, I think Europe is leading the way, and it's something we need to take advantage, just advice from. I would say, is that here in North America, there's not a lot of regulation when it comes to electric motorcycles, electric bikes, scooters, whatever. All of these electric mobility devices are not regulated very well. Now, some people will see this as freedom, which I can understand, but it also means that people can buy an electric scooter or a bike with, 2,000 nominal watts, which is a lot of power. That is a ton of power. That's enough to get you going up to like 70 kilometers an hour. That's too fast. That is too fast for someone who's uninsured and unlicensed. Period. It is just too fast. And I think we should actually, I'm going to make a video about this in the future, where we should be implementing some kind of license system where if you have an e-bike or scooter or whatever micromobility device that goes over 30 kilometers an hour or has like 500 watt or more power, you need to have some kind of license. And that's what they do in Europe. Even in some places where I think it's in Germany and Switzerland, for example, they don't allow any device to go over 25 kilometers per hour, period. So any kind of scooter or electric bike, I think that's a bit too slow. What they have in the Netherlands, I think, is a pretty good example where if it goes over, I think it's around 30 kilometers per hour, you can get other devices like an e-bike that could go up to 48 or something like that, but you need a license and insurance, which I think is great.
Yeah.
We need training for that kind of stuff too. We're having more and more people who don't have driver's license, young people who are just coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to get an e-bike instead. They need to have training, because a lot of that training when it comes to road safety comes from that training you get as a driver. Now, that should be in conjunction with changing the way our built environment is so that it's more intuitive and you don't need as much training and it's just safer in general. But in the meantime, yeah, that could go a long way.
Yeah.
But you're right, Matt Montgomery, that the lines are blurred and people make note of that. It's pointed out to me many times that, I'm cheating or something because I have, a scooter that can go up to 50 kilometers per hour. And I agree. I shouldn't be able to just buy that and use it without any kind of license or registration or insurance.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with that, and I think 30 kilometers an hour is kind of a fair number. I think most of our bikes here go up to 32 kilometers an hour. Most of the e-bikes that you'll buy, and I think that's a fair number. I think our residential streets should have a 30 kilometer an hour speed limit, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable speed at which to travel through a city, at least in most instances. Obviously, we have like highways and whatever, but yeah, I think that's a number that makes sense, and I think if you're going to get more powered, well, yeah, then you are blurring the line between micromobility and something more like a motorcycle. Yeah, I think that's a great insight. Ethan, do you have any more thoughts?
You also have to look into the fact that just limiting overall, the motor wattage that comes out of these things is super important, because you got to remember that people can and very much will hack their e-bikes or e-scooters to go and push that motor to its literal breaking point, rather than dealing with the governor. So it is kind of important to regulate wattage on the or output wattage on the vehicles. But it is super important.
Yeah,
and
not.
I think
it shouldn't be a top priority for a city. I mean, we need to regulate cars in the first place to make that safer. But it's definitely something that will come down the pipeline in the future.
Yeah. Boy, this episode has really flown by. Do we have other things we want to talk about?
We got another question here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. We've got Jen's question here, but after that, how much time are we going to spend on this?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. We've got so much.
That's right.
Time.
We're speed running episodes now, folks.
We are speed running.
We're just so used to having an extra guest on the podcast where they can just ramble about whatever they're doing. So it makes it last a lot longer, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we're gonna have to each take a turn and ramble about what we're doing after
everybody gets a Woogmug this episode.
Yes,
I've got a reprisal in a Woogmug that I want to talk about.
All right, well, we'll go into those after Jen's question here that she commented on our last video. Jen asks, what's your personal record for how far you've traveled on micromobility, bike, scooter, board, etc., in one day? Let's go with Ethan first.
With what? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Something was going on.
He's looking for more stories. No. He's just looking for more content.
Yeah, I'm digging. That's what I'm digging for right now.
Yeah. You're stalling. What's the farthest you've traveled on micromobility in one day? And before you speak, I want to make a note. I'm pretty sure Austin is listening. I want to hear Austin's answer to this, because Austin goes hard and he's probably got a crazy insane number. So go ahead.
He's probably 4,000 miles. I think probably like 25 miles, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, one day I commuted to work, went to the beach afterward, and then commuted all the way home, and it was like 25 miles because I felt like riding too, and I wanted to have a good time. So 25 miles.
It's pretty solid.
Not bad. Nick?
The most I've done is definitely on a bicycle, and I think it was about just over 75, almost 80 kilometers in one day, which I think is like close to 50 miles, something like that. Me and my wife are working towards just a physical challenge, which is to get to a proper century, which is 160 kilometers, 100 miles. But before I leave for Europe, I think we're doing 100 kilometers, so that'll be in a couple weeks, which I'm excited for. I like a good physical challenge, and that'll do it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's super exciting. I'm probably aroundish the same as Ethan. My bike to work is like 13 kilometers, and then back, obviously. So that's almost 30 kilometers. Plus, if I do any detours along the way, that's probably my longest. But Austin here responded. He says just over 300 kilometers for me on my bicycle, Calgary to Edmonton. Hashtag not humble brag.
My God.
In a single day. He says left Calgary around 6 a.m. and arrived in Edmonton at 8 p.m.
And if it was the future, you could take the train back. The 300 kilometer per hour train back.
Goodness. Have we talked? We've talked about the train.
We did last week.
2 weeks ago.
Which
2 weeks ago. Okay, we did talk about it. Hopefully, 2 weeks ago, because that's the last time I was on. So we must have covered.
Trains
that.
are coming. Hopefully,
there's been a lot happening.
There's a plan coming
in Alberta. There is a plan coming. So next year we'll have the master plan, and then they want to start construction in 2027. And I say yes, please. That would be absolutely incredible if we manage to actually get that kicked off and get that rolling. There is Reese Martin did a video on RM Transit about that plan.
Yeah, that was a good video.
If you haven't seen that yet, check that out. Trains are coming for Alberta. And actually, speaking of Alberta, since we have some extra time, we're just going to kind of chat here. This is kind of going to be a fun little episode. I went to Edmonton and I added a card to my collection. Austin and I went to Edmonton last Saturday.
Did you bike with them?
And we did not bike. We took the bus to Edmonton, and then we had like 5 hours in Edmonton to wander around, but it was all smoky. So I was pretty disappointed with a lot of the shots that I got, which was quite the bummer. But I did get some cool stuff of the trains. Let me see if I can find some stuff. Oh yeah, because the Valley Line, it's still, the other half is under construction, so it's still on my phone. It's not on my computer yet, so I'm just gonna hold my phone up to the screen. But you can see, that's the West Edmonton Mall station, wow. I think. Yeah, so they're putting a train station at the world's largest parking lot. So that should be fun. Edmonton had some pretty interesting stations. They had Calgary only has one underground station, but Edmonton's got quite a few. So yeah, it was a pretty cool trip, and I was pretty excited to ride around on transit. But man,
I'm curious though, what's your favorite transit card that you have? Transit pass.
My favorite, well, okay, so my favorite is honestly probably just the Calgary Transit one, because it's just
no bias
an
here.
App. Well, it's just an app. It is so easy.
Oh, that's the exact same UI that I think half the other agencies use, because I know Vegas uses that one.
Yeah, it's super convenient.
It looks like RTC's app, but red. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, really? It might be the exact same. But then the only other ones that I have are Opus from Montreal and Arc from Edmonton. And I didn't get an Oyster card when I was in London. I should have, and I'm embarrassed that I didn't.
Oh, it's so expensive, though. Oh, my God. I'm not looking forward to that. That's why I'm going to get on a bike.
Yeah. London, it was
expensive. It's so expensive, the Underground.
The Oyster card, yeah.
The Underground is super expensive. I came back to Calgary, and I was like, oh, this is so nice. Affordable transit. Yeah. I'm just looking in my journal here, because I do have a pass.
Gotta say,
from...
What do you got?
This one's got to be one of my favorites. It's the Holo card from Hawaii, from Honolulu.
That's pretty cool.
That's for their Skyline. Yeah, it's pretty nice. That's one of the ones I didn't get myself.
This one is my favorite. This is it's blurring it out. The Ikoka card. This is from Western Japan for Kyoto and Osaka area. Looking through the collections here.
Yeah, we're all just flexing our transit cards, folks.
It's just a ticket.
Oh, yeah. I've got a collection of those, too.
I got lovely San Diego with the purple.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to buy, I think next month I'm going to buy a physical transit pass for Calgary Transit, just so that I have one. Yeah. Just as kind of like a Nito Bodito thing. I do want to say something. Okay, so as far as the process goes, for these things, let's talk about processes of these transit systems. So Calgary, you download the app on your phone, you can get the ticket, you activate it right before you hop on the bus, you scan it on the scanner, and then you go, right? But then for Edmonton, there's a big ticket machine, and you can buy the ARC card and you can reload it and whatever. Montreal, this was a pain in my ass. This was really, really frustrating. So I was staying in Longueuil, which is, and I haven't made a video about my Montreal trip yet, but I'll talk about this there too, probably. So I was in Zone 2, okay? And to get around Zone 1, the island of Montreal, is relatively affordable. But to get around Zone 2, where I was staying, you had to pay it was a significant premium. It was oh, you're in Zone 2? Fuck you. It was I was so mad. I was so upset. And so here's the thing. So we have this, and I bought this at the airport, and I just downloaded, I got the weekend any zone pass, right? I was I'll get the weekend any zone pass, and then I'll figure out what to do next, right? Then maybe I'll just upload, a number of tickets, or I'll get a week pass or whatever. Then I go online and I figure out, I'm like, it's Monday morning, okay? So the weekend pass is expired. And I'm like, well, I got to catch the bus into Montreal for the day and, go and look around at things. And so then I go on and I'm Googling how to reload my Opus card. And it's like, oh, you have to have this card reader. And I'm like, okay, that should be interesting. So let me see if I can find Opus card reader. This thing. This drove me absolutely nuts. So you can order one.
Thank you, Austin.
Here, this is crazy. I'll share my screen. Yeah. So you have to like get this card reader and plug it into your computer.
Oh my god.
And so I go on there. Let's see if I can actually like poke through. So yeah, I go through this whole process, and then so you have to download the plugin and everything and install it. And obviously, like, I don't have the card reader here, so it's not gonna figure it out. But I do believe, so it's no longer available June 30th. So I think they're gonna start using smartphone pay stuff, which is great. That's great news. But yeah, so I'm using this dumb little card reader, and fortunately, the friend I was staying with, she had a card reader. I was like, what is this card reader? She's like, yeah, I got one of those. I've never used it though. So I open up this package, and I plug in the card, and then I have to go on, and it didn't have like, it wasn't like you can buy one ticket if you want. You can buy the. It was like, oh, you're in zone 2. You have to get a month pass. So I paid for a month pass to get around Montreal for like 5 days.
Did they not have like a fare machine that you could like tap your card onto?
Not at the bus stops.
Oh,
so like
okay.
I could have gone to the train station, but I had to get to the train station first. And I'm sure I met a lot of lovely people in Montreal. The bus drivers were not among those people. I love bus drivers, but the Montreal bus drivers did not seem very nice. And so I was like, I'm not going to get on the bus, because in Calgary, you can get on the bus and you can just be like, hey, look, like I need to go refill my card or whatever. I need to go buy tickets, and so I'm headed downtown. And they'll be like, yeah, whatever, But I didn't want to risk that in Montreal, especially if I'm speaking broken French to them. And they're like, this asshole, get off my bus. And I'm like, so I didn't want to offend them. So then I'm just like, fine, I'll just pay for the monthly pass that opens me up to like, all 3 zones or whatever. I was mad. I was really mad. But it was fun. I just overpaid, and that was really frustrating.
I think we've all overpaid for transit at some point. I did it. I've done it in San Francisco. That was probably the worst one.
Especially if you're like new to a system, right? Like in the Calgary transit system, like I know how that system works. I'm not worried about it at all. But then when you're new to a system, Ethan, tell us about your San Francisco overpaying.
So wonderful thing about the Clipper card. So San Francisco has like 500 billion different agencies in the Bay Area, but they all rely on one Clipper card here. You've got one too, Nick?
Well, Transit Pass, Eskimo Brothers.
Absolutely. Well, the Clipper card, unfortunately, loves to overcharge you for Muni trips. So I believe a Muni light rail trip is something like, it's like $2 to ride the Muni light rail, but my Clipper card kept charging me $3 to ride it. So that's where I got overcharged, because I was using it like crazy. I was using the Muni light rail like. That's one of the things you'll use a lot in San Francisco is just Muni light rail, and yeah, I just got overcharged there. I kept getting nickel and dimed by Muni, and I'm like, this is great, because one thing is that their day passes, like, they never scan, and if you have turnstiles to deal with, it's just awful. It's just awful, because it won't scan at the turnstile, and you can't get to your train.
That's super frustrating.
Well, at least when you overpay, you can consider it a donation to the system.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for your service, Ethan.
I just wanted to share, I think when we had Dennis Agar, he was talking about it, but these ones I love. It's like a little SkyTrain as a pass instead of a card.
I saw that.
And they also have wearables, like you can get a wristband for the system here in Vancouver. But I love these, the little SkyTrain.
I do love that.
I'd like to get one of those.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing is fantastic. I want to highlight in our live audience, which you can join by signing up on Patreon, Austin mentions his transit card collection, which, by the way, I just want to say one of Austin's biggest reasons for moving to Calgary was because of the C train. So, not to brag, but we've got fans all over the place. So Austin, though, he has Presto, DC Smart Trip, Seattle Orca, Chicago Ventra, New York MetroCard, Winnipeg Pego, and Edmonton's ARC card. He says he thinks those are the cards he has. Jen also offers up a criticism of the Calgary Transit Pass, and that's that there aren't like daily and weekly and monthly maximums, which fare capping is something Calgary Transit is working on. That's on the list of things to do. But right now we are falling behind Edmonton because Edmonton does have fare capping, which is very, very, very nice.
I like the way that they do it in Tokyo, where the fare is based on the distance. Like it's like if you're just going one stop over, it's like whatever, less than 100 yen. And then if you go really far, it's never more, the most it gets up to is usually, well, I guess it can go really, really far. It could be more expensive, but usually it's within, $1 to $4.
And is that like a tap your credit card in and out kind of
No,
system?
you need to get a Suica card or like the one I have for that Suica in Tokyo, but it's the same kind of system in, Western Japan. Just that Icoca card I showed you, same thing. You just load it up and then you just tap it and it'll just charge you whatever. You can get day passes as well. Or you go to the machine and you buy tickets. And the little ticket you put in, you keep it, and then you take it out. And that works too.
Gotta say, I do love Los Angeles. $1.75, and it's capped at like $6 for the day.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow.
That's really good.
That's really, really good. That's nice.
Yeah, LA Transit is so cheap.
I like that. I do. I don't know. What do you guys think about the idea of free transit? Do you think that should be a thing, or do you think there's some like benefit to having some sort of fare?
I think there should be something.
Yeah.
Sorry,
here's always one thing that I run into, especially with people online. You'll see a lot of the newer urbanists as well say this too, of like all transits should be fare free, and I wouldn't complain. However, there is no serious transit system that is fare free anywhere in the world. If you look at all the major cities around the world, they all use their fares for maintenance and improving the system and improving operations and paying their people. And if you make it fare free, you really kind of hamstring how you can fund your system there. So it's cool that cities like Albuquerque or Tucson have fare free systems, but at the end of the day, their best transit is a BRT line or a downtown streetcar. And then the rest of their buses are very lackluster. So it's just, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it needs to be there as a barrier to entry, not to keep people out necessarily, but like, let's be honest. If you're going to make it free, you're going to have ruffians, youths riding it just to ride it, right? Which is like, they're just kids most of the time, but they can cause trouble. And if, you have something there so that we don't just have random people riding it for the sake of riding it, it's a tiny, tiny thing. It's even the most expensive you can make it, if you're using it every day, $2,000 a year is reasonable for a lot of people. I mean, you could offer discounts for people who really need it. I think that's fair too, but most people can afford that.
You can make it really easy to make it affordable to ride and expand reduced fares, or even free fare passes to other people, but you don't have to make the system entirely free to everybody, because if your system is good, you are going to have wealthy riders who can afford to pay to ride the system. Say, like New York City, for example, $2.90 to ride. I'm pretty sure anybody working Wall Street can afford that. Now, the students who ride the system get their own special Metro cards that they can use to ride for free.
Or free to children, like we talked about in the past. It showed an uptick in ridership among adults when they had it free for children. So there's different things you can do. It doesn't have to be completely free.
No, you can make incentives to ride, reduced fare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, or even, like having free fare on the way to certain events, right? Like big hockey games or whatever, right? Like making it easy for people to use transit in like certain situations, I think can help as well. But yeah, generally, I'd say I'm pretty on board with that. I do appreciate some fare-free zones in like certain economic corridors. If you want people to leave the car behind, I think that could be a good system. I think one thing that I think would be really cool is if you had like a local looping tram in like certain centers that was free. That is just like that's a free transit service. But then to kind of extend out of that,
You're starting to sound
then it's ticketed.
you're starting to sound like Barack Obama's Secretary of Transportation.
Oh, really?
There's actually a whole term for a lot of American cities that have like streetcars that are like 3 to 5 miles long that were built in like 2000 or planned in 2008 and then built in like the 2010s, and it's called the Obama streetcars. They're kind of everywhere. They're kind of everywhere around the U.S. and they're really goofy little systems. And I'll probably end up making a video on them. But yeah, they're so goofy.
Hey, don't hate.
I know I love them, but sometimes they're just they range
they're
between
cute.
Really really good or just like insanely useless. Like there's such a wide range on them.
Yeah, and I think that's why like you need to build your transit smart, and I do think fares can help with that. Speaking of videos, Ethan should probably make soon. When's the Canadian City tier list video coming out, Ethan?
We'll give it a minute. We'll give it a minute.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to it. We're probably going to wrap the show up there. Everybody got a little bit of a taste of what our conversations are like after the show. Because we just usually chat for a hot second.
What about my Wugmug? It's been a while.
Your Wugmug. Okay, wrap us up with your Wugmug.
Long time.
How are you going to deprive Nick of his Wugmug, Alex?
Hey, I'm sorry.
This is what happens when you let the
co-host.
woke mob take over this show, folks.
When the WEF starts funding us, this is what happens. You don't get the Wugmugs anymore. All right, this
no
is
Wugmugs, just woke mugs.
This is a reprisal. I've talked about this before, but it's something that grinds my gears, and it happened again recently, and it's the must get in front of syndrome. And what happens on our bike streets, it drives me fucking mental. So I was heading out to play some little bit of pitch and putt with my friends over at the golf course, and I was on my electric scooter, and I was speeding. I was going 37 kilometers an hour in a 30 zone on a bike street. And I had my turn signal on, ready to turn left. And it's blinking, it's flashing away, and I'm slowly starting to move over. And this guy in a van, a minivan, it was a Honda Odyssey, if I remember. It was that copper champagne color. He starts to try to pass me as I'm about to turn. And I'm going 37 kilometers an hour in a residential area. Anyway, he slams on his brake, he honks at me, and I flipped the fuck out on him. Now, my point here is not to say, hey, you should flip the fuck out on drivers. I want to ask you guys how to not flip the fuck out, because I started yelling. I said, do you see this? I'm pointing down at my scooter. This is a fucking turn signal. Watch what you're doing, asshole. And he just waved his hands around and took off because he knew he was wrong. And I would have beat the shit out of him. He was a tiny little man. Anyway. Anyway, how do you not freak out? I was talking to my wife about this. I'm like, I don't want to freak out like that. I want to have, more productive interactions when these things happen. Do you guys have any just anything? A thumbs down?
Good old thumbs down. Good old I disapprove. You're disappointing.
I will so okay. If somebody drives through the crosswalk while I'm crossing the street, I will say most Calgary drivers are pretty good about not doing that. Better than anywhere else I've been in the world, not to brag or anything. But all I do is brag about Calgary, so it's expected. But the other week somebody did they drove like right in front of me and I yelled. I'm like, "Hey!" And they stopped their car and they got out. And the person who was in the car with them was like trying to talk them down. Like, don't, man, don't do it. And he gets out of the car, and I'm like, dude, you didn't even stop at the stop sign. And he's like, so? I'm like, well, one, that's illegal. Also, I was in the crosswalk, man. Like, pedestrians are walking here. And he was like really angry with me. And eventually I was like, okay, well, like, don't break the law. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, don't break the law. It's the law for a reason. That was dangerous. And he eventually got in his car. But I do want to highlight, similar to the musket in front of syndrome that you're talking about, is the cute little hand wave that people do when they like almost hit you. They're like,
oh, is that my bad? Oh, sorry.
They do that?
Oopsies.
Yeah.
They give you the common courtesy of that there?
Sometimes you get the finger, you get the bird, but
Yeah. Well, yeah. So you're like crossing the street, and sometimes they'll like pull in front, and then as they're driving across the crosswalk, they'll like make eye contact with you, and they're like, oops,
did I do that?
Oopsies. I didn't see you there. I wasn't paying attention and almost hit you with my 2,000-pound battering ram.
See, this is where you get your bricks, guys. I don't deal with this because I always pick up my cross rock. A nice little throwback there. I pick up my cross rock at the intersection, and no one seems to, want to have a little dent in their windshield. So apparently the call to safe light is just too much. But running over a person, no qualms about it.
Yeah. It's wild. It's honestly like it's like somebody firing a gun around you and then looking at you and being like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize there were people in the area that I was firing at." And it's like, oh my god, like what planet do I live on where people are so unaware of like the weapon that they're controlling?
It's always
right
the
now.
biggest vehicle too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So how do you deal with it, Nick? I don't know. Good luck out there.
I mean, I've heard different
mean.
things.
Be mean.
Give the
Get
thumbs
angry.
up and smile, like, good job, because then it's kind of a sarcastic thing. I know Doug from the War on Cars said, tell people that you're scared, like you scared me. That was scary.
Yeah.
But I think my approach will try to be, just, hey, man, be careful. There's kids who live here. Just like, and just take a deep breath and just try not to let my hormones take over me and just turn into this ball of rage.
You actually just need to crash
Yeah.
out. That's all you need to do is just go into a blind rage.
Ruin my life. That's fine. But I won the argument. So.
You won. You won.
That's
there you
all
go.
That matters. Thanks for the wug mug. I think that's one that we can keep bringing up again.
Jen's got a good one, and she says, "I think there should be magnets we can carry around. I guess stickers would be good too. We can slap on cars that say, "I almost murdered a pedestrian today," or "I almost murdered a cyclist today," etc.
It's like cart narcs, when they're trying to,
they're
trying to leave, you just go.
Yeah, I want that, but also for idling. I want cart narc stickers for idling.
Yeah. Oh, that would be good. The magnets are good because they just come off, but hopefully some people see it beforehand, and of course they see it as well, and can feel stupid hopefully. But anyways, shame works. Look at cigarettes in North America, outside of the U.S. South and Quebec. Shame works pretty well. So anyways, this was fun. This was a good podcast. If you want to tune in live, you can join us on the Patreon. You can join good people like Jen and Austin who watched live today and even got to participate a little bit, especially since we kind of, I don't know, I feel like we talk a little bit more during the news portion usually. But we kind of dipped out on that today. But this was a lot of fun. Ethan, where can we find you?
Folks, you can find me over at Climate and Transit on most sites except for Twitter. You can find me over there at Climate Transit. Nick, where can we find you?
I'm at Nick Laporte on YouTube or Nick the Door in other socials. Alex?
And Nick, do you want to hand it off to me?
Yes,
I'm sorry,
Alex, where can the people find you?
The people can find me at Humane Cities on YouTube and Instagram, and now Threads as well. Also, Unsprawling. We have some super, super fun stuff happening with Unsprawling. If you're in Calgary, that's going to be a big change
Look
maker.
at this guy
for
using
the urbanism
Threads.
Here. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
One guy.
I'm a big... One guy. Actually, the Calgary urbanist scene on Threads is like popping off. So it's a pretty good time. Even you should hop on over to Threads. Also move to Calgary and hang out with us. Austin is even on Threads. He said there. And I do, real quick as we close here, I want to give a shout out to a project that Jen is working on. It's called Rad Ride Rack, and she just started this up, just kind of highlighting good bike parking around the city. So that's pretty exciting, because we need more good bike parking. And with that, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Folks, just remember, train good, car bad.
2 wheels good.
And feet first.